All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're unpacking a profoundly mystical, deeply philosophical text called The Laughter of the Monks. And let me tell you, this isn't just some dry academic read. It explores that incredibly subtle space between duality and true consciousness. It's literally a guide to understanding reality itself, giving us a way to find that quiet, still middle ground in what is, let's face it, a really noisy world. So let's just jump right in. To kick things off, we're hit with this captivating mystery. Picture an ancient Chinese parable about three monks. These guys traveled from village to village doing absolutely nothing but laughing. No preaching, no lectures, just pure, infectious laughter that would spread like wildfire until entire towns were just cracking up with them. But then, out of nowhere, one of the monks dies. The villagers rush over to the surviving monks, naturally expecting to see sorrow and grief. Which begs the question, why on earth would you laugh at a funeral?
Well, get this. Instead of crying, the surviving monks actually laugh even harder. Turns out, they were laughing because of a bet they'd made with the deceased over who was going to die first. He won. And his final request? To be cremated in his old, dirty clothes because he claimed he never once let the filth of the world touch him, all thanks to his laughter. So they light the pyre, and as his body burns, those unwashed clothes suddenly burst into this massive, spectacular display of fireworks, hundreds of colors. And honestly, at that point, the entire village couldn't help but just erupt into laughter right along with them.
Now, we gotta be a little careful here not to misinterpret this. Their laughter, it isn't just some mechanical reaction. They aren't just awkwardly laughing it off or superficially suppressing their pain. As this quote perfectly nails it, it's an awakening. It's this deep realization that winning and losing, living and dying, it's all just a game. They aren't running from the pain at all. They're observing it from a place where joy and suffering are seen as exactly what they are, just different waves on the exact same water.
And that brings us to a really crucial distinction in the text, duality versus polarity. So duality is that constant struggle between two opposing sides, right? A versus B, cause and effect, winning and losing. The text actually calls this the twinity. But polarity? Polarity is the much larger frame that actively holds both of those poles without actually being a pole itself. Going back to that metaphor, it's the actual water holding the waves.
Okay, so here's where it gets really fascinating. The absolute key here is this idea of a trinity. We're not just looking at a two-ness, we are looking at a three-ness. This third element is the stillness, or what they call being, which allows the two opposite poles to even exist and interact in the first place. It's not another player joining the tug-of-war. Rather, it's the solid ground the players are standing on so they can play the game at all.
The author uses this brilliant analogy to explain the dynamic. Imagine those dual poles, yin and yang, left and right, good and bad, as two hands constantly wrestling, grasping and moving around. This third element, the still center, well, it isn't a third hand randomly jumping into the fight. Actually, it is the first hand. It's the original, completely unshakable stillness out of which any movement, any friction becomes possible.
This is perfectly illustrated by the concept of the atom. So the A is that original zero, the still center, the golden circle. And it effortlessly holds together Tom, which represents the masculine, and Mot, which is literally just Tom spelled backward, representing the feminine. It holds them both without ever picking a side. It's a zero, sure, but it isn't empty. It carries literally everything within it. It's the vacuum and the absolute fullness all at exactly the same time.
But wait, you might be thinking, what about our actual physical lives? Are they just meaningless? Not at all. The explainer text makes this super clear. Physical reality, our bodies, our struggles, matter itself, is precisely where this grand illusion gets to be played out. Reality isn't separated from the absolute. The physical world exists purely so the absolute can fully experience itself through tangible, real-world consequences. Yes, it's an illusion, but it's an illusion we are totally meant to dive into and experience fully.
You know, when you actually try to put this absolute stillness into words, they kind of just fail us. The author makes this great comparison. Time and space are just ingredients like salt and pepper in a kitchen. They're what make creation graspable and give it some flavor, but they definitely aren't the actual dish itself. If you were to strip away the salt and pepper of time and space, what's left literally has no name, because, well, slapping a name on it would just be tossing another ingredient into the pot.
And hey, even the absolute brightest minds run right into this wall. The text points out how physics itself struggles to define the undefinable. Remember Albert Einstein's famous issue with quantum entanglement?
He famously dubbed it spooky action at a distance. He was totally struggling to describe these connected particles that seemed to just completely bypass the kitchen of space and time altogether. He couldn't find a technical term for it because the phenomenon straight up breaks the rules of the kitchen.
Since language ultimately falls short when dealing with this physics-defying reality, the text introduces this really cool concept of permission slips. Basically, every single word we use, whether it's peace, stillness, energy, or even complex scientific formulas, is just a permission slip. It's a temporary license we use to kind of point at an absolute stillness that we're never truly going to grasp or define. They're just the signposts on the side of the road, guys, not the actual destination.
To take this a step further, the source breaks down 3 distinct levels of awareness. First, you have knowing, which is like watching cars drive by on a street. Then comes understanding, like spending years reading a manual about how a transmission works. But neither of those is being. Being is the consciousness of actually sitting behind the wheel and driving the car yourself. You can memorize all the facts, you can read every book ever written, but that is never going to automatically translate into lived, real-time consciousness behind the wheel of your own life. Which brings us right back around to our 3 monks. Why did they laugh at death? Because they learned being through actual lived experience. Just like we only learn to walk by falling down and getting some scrapes, the monks probably fell through many lifetimes to finally reach this state of pure awareness. They completely recognize that an end always brings a new beginning. In the absolute sense, death just isn't real. It's just another part of the grand illusion the eternal plays with itself. From that absolute perspective, birth and death, they're exactly the same thing, just waves on the same water.
Ultimately, those monks are laughing at the human attempt to intellectually grasp the ungraspable. All of our complex theories, our heated philosophical debates, it's really just us trying to secure something that needs absolutely zero security. The laughter itself is the answer. True being doesn't require any solid proof, any external validation, or some grand philosophical explanation. It just is.
So, the next time you find yourself super caught up in the intense struggle of opposites, try to remember that still center. Take a breath and remember to laugh. By the way, if you want to learn more about the expansion of consciousness and healing work with the subconscious mind, you can find a lot of useful information on the website www.sbcompetence.com by Stefan Beck, consciousness trainer and SOL-Hypnosis master. I'll leave you with this final thought. If your entire life is just a grand game being played by the absolute, how will you choose to play your next move?